whispers in the dark. The void between stars held no mercy, and Commander Vorath knew this truth better than most. His flagship, the Eternal Judgment, cut through the darkness at the head of 400 warships, the pride of the Keltharian Empire. For 3 centuries, his people had ruled this sector, crushing 20 lesser species beneath their superior technology and ruthless tactics. Now they hunted humanity, a species that had ventured beyond their small blue world only decades ago. Pathetic creatures, Vorath muttered, his scaled fingers tapping against the command console. His crimson eyes studied the tactical display where 25 human vessels appeared as small red dots against the black. They send children to fight wars. Beside him, Lieutenant Drea stood rigid, her silver uniform pressed perfectly against her lithe frame. Unlike her commander, she had read every report about these humans. Something about their patterns disturbed her, though she couldn't articulate why. "Commander, perhaps we should..." "Should what?" Vorath snapped. "Show mercy. We are 16 times their number. This will be over in minutes." He raised his voice to the bridge crew. "All batteries target lock. Prepare to demonstrate what happens when primitives challenge the Empire." The human fleet did something unexpected. Instead of scattering or attempting retreat, they formed a tight spearhead formation, their ships moving with unsettling precision. For a moment, Drea's breath caught. They moved as one organism, as if connected by invisible threads. "They're charging us," a tactical officer reported, disbelief coloring his voice. Vorath laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the bridge. Fools rushed toward their extinction. "Open fire!" The void erupted in violence. Keltharian plasma cannons screamed across space, painting the darkness with lethal light. But the human formation didn't break. They rolled, spun, and weaved through the barrage with impossible coordination. Return fire came in devastating pulses, each shot finding weak points in Keltharian shields with surgical accuracy. "How are they?" Drea's question died as 3 Empire cruisers exploded simultaneously, their hulls torn apart by focused human fire. The battle spiraled into chaos. Vorath's confident commands became desperate shouts. His 400 ships outnumbered the humans, yet somehow the humans were winning. They fought with a unity the Empire had never achieved, each vessel anticipating the other's movements, creating overlapping fields of fire that trapped Keltharian ships in killing zones. An hour passed, then 2. The Empire's losses mounted. 50 ships, then 80, then over 100. The human fleet lost only 6 vessels, their wrecks drifting like fallen stars. "This isn't possible," Vorath whispered, his scales paling. "They're too few. They should be dead." Drea watched her console, heart pounding. Every tactical doctrine she'd studied was being rewritten before her. These humans fought like no species she'd encountered, not with rage or fear, but with cold calculation and absolute trust in each other. Then, as suddenly as it began, the humans disengaged. Their remaining 19 ships formed up and vanished into hyperspace, leaving the Empire's battered fleet alone among the debris. Silence claimed the bridge. Vorath sat heavily in his command throne, staring at the void where his easy victory had become a nightmare. 123 ships destroyed or crippled by barely 24 humans. "Commander," a communications officer called weakly, "we're receiving distress signals from a damaged human fighter. It's still intact, floating in Sector 7. "Bring it aboard," Vorath ordered, his voice hollow. "Carefully." 20 minutes later, Drea stood in the medical bay beside a human pilot who had been pulled from the wreckage. The young woman's pressure suit was torn, her dark hair matted with blood. But her eyes, those strange, expressive human eyes, remained steady despite her injuries. "What are you?" Drea asked softly, genuinely curious. "How did you do that?" The human pilot, her name tag reading Ensign N. Korev, smiled faintly. When she spoke, her voice carried a weight that made Drea's skin prickle. "You think that was impressive? You think we fought with everything we had?" Drea leaned closer. "What do you mean?" Korev's smile widened, though pain flickered across her face. "We're the expeditionary force. Test pilots, scouts." She coughed, then met Drea's gaze with unsettling calm. "The fleet you just fought? We're not even 1% of humanity's true strength." "That's impossible," Drea breathed. "Is it?" The human's expression softened into something almost pitiful. "You've ruled this part of space for centuries. You think you understand war." She paused, her next words barely a whisper. "The real fleet hasn't even left our home system yet. What you saw today? We were just buying time while they finished preparations. Before Drea could respond, the human's eyes closed, exhaustion claiming her. Drea stood frozen, the pilot's words echoing in her mind. She thought of the impossible coordination she'd witnessed, the terrifying precision, the unshakable resolve. If that was merely their exploratory force, their scout ships testing the waters. She walked to the observation window, staring into the star-scattered void. Somewhere in that darkness, Commander Marcus Webb's expeditionary fleet regrouped, sending their data home. And somewhere beyond her sight, something far larger was stirring. For the first time in her military career, Lieutenant Drea felt true fear. Not for herself, but for her entire species. The whispers had begun. Whispers that would soon consume the galaxy in terror. What if the humans were telling the truth? Seeds of fear. 3 weeks after the disastrous engagement, Lieutenant Drea found herself aboard Terminus Station, a neutral trading hub that floated in the buffer zone between Empire space and the scattered human territories. Her assignment was simple: gather intelligence on humanity's true capabilities. Her reality was far more complicated. Ambassador Thelros, a portly Keltharian diplomat with fading scales and nervous eyes, escorted her through the crowded marketplace. The humans agreed to this meeting as a gesture of goodwill, he explained, his voice barely audible above the din of 100 species bartering and arguing. They claim to want peace. Peace, Drea repeated flatly. After humiliating our fleet? They didn't destroy us when they could have, Thelros countered. That suggests restraint. Perhaps even mercy. Drea's hand instinctively moved to the weapon at her hip. Since the battle, sleep came in fragments, haunted by Ensign Korev's words. The real fleet hasn't even left our home system yet. Command had dismissed the claim as psychological warfare, but Drea couldn't shake the memory of those calm human eyes. They arrived at a private dining establishment, its walls made of transparent aluminum offering views of the stars. 2 humans waited inside. The first was a woman in her 40s, dressed in practical merchant clothing. She had dark skin, short cropped hair, and eyes that assessed everything with mercantile calculation. Captain Mira Tanaka, she introduced herself, extending a hand in the human greeting gesture. Independent trader, currently hauling medical supplies to the outer rim. The second human made Drea's breath catch. Dr. James Cortez stood with the easy confidence of someone comfortable in their own skin. He was tall by human standards, with bronze skin, dark hair touched with silver at the temples, and warm brown eyes that seemed to see past her military bearing to something deeper. Lieutenant Drea, he said, his voice rich and measured. I'm a xenobiologist studying cross-species cultural exchange. Thank you for agreeing to this meeting. I didn't agree, Drea said tersely. I was ordered. Cortez smiled, and something about that expression made her pulse quicken. Honesty. I appreciate that. Please, sit. We're not here to convert you or deceive you, just to talk. The meal was uncomfortable at first. Thelros attempted diplomatic small talk, while Tanaka discussed trade routes with practiced ease. But Drea found her attention continually drawn to Cortez, who asked thoughtful questions about Keltharian culture, biology, even art. Your people produce remarkable poetry, he said at one point, referencing an obscure text Drea herself had studied years ago. The Songs of the Dying Sun, the way it explores mortality and legacy through stellar metaphor, is haunting. Drea blinked in surprise. You've read the songs? That's very few outside the Empire even know it exists. I find that understanding another species requires more than studying their weapons, Cortez replied. You have to understand what they love, what they fear, what moves them. His eyes met hers, and for a moment the crowded station seemed to fade. What moves you, Lieutenant? The question was innocent, but something in his tone made it feel intimate. Drea found herself answering honestly. Truth. I've spent my career following orders, believing in the Empire's superiority. Now I'm not certain what's true anymore. That's called growth, Cortez said softly. It's uncomfortable but necessary. Tanaka, who had been watching their exchange with knowing amusement, leaned back in her chair. Let me cut through the diplomatic niceties. Lieutenant, your command wants to know if the rumors are true. If humanity has larger fleets waiting in reserve. Drea stiffened. Do you? Yes, Tanaka said simply. The bluntness shocked Drea. Thelros sputtered, nearly choking on his drink. You're admitting it? Why lie? Tanaka shrugged. The truth serves us better. Yes, the expeditionary fleets are a fraction of our total strength. Yes, we have reserve forces. We'd be idiots not to. How many? Drea demanded. Tanaka smiled. Enough. But here's what matters. We don't want to use them. War is expensive, destructive, and pointless if diplomatic solutions exist. Your people destroyed over 100 of our ships with barely 24 vessels, Drea said, her voice tight. That's not restraint. That's predatory efficiency. Cortez leaned forward, his expression serious. Would you prefer we rolled over and died? Made ourselves easy targets to prove we're peaceful? He shook his head. Lieutenant, humanity learned centuries ago that strength and peace aren't mutually exclusive. We defend ourselves fiercely, but that doesn't mean we seek conquest. Then what do you seek? Drea challenged. Coexistence, Cortez said. Cooperation. Maybe even friendship. His gaze held hers. Though I understand that takes time. Trust isn't given, it's earned. Something in his words resonated. Drea found herself wondering what it would be like to truly know this human, to understand the mind behind those thoughtful eyes. The thought was dangerous and entirely inappropriate for someone in her position. The dinner ended with more questions than answers. Tanaka provided Drea with coordinates to 3 human trade stations, offering access to cultural databases. Cortez gave her a data chip. My research on Keltharian human neurological similarities, he explained. We're not as different as you think. Our brains process emotion, fear, hope, all remarkably similar. Read it when you doubt whether understanding between our species is possible. As they parted, Cortez touched her arm lightly, a brief electric contact. I hope we meet again, Lieutenant. I think we have much to learn from each other. Walking back through the station, Thelros was pale. They admitted having reserve fleets. We must report this immediately. But Drea barely heard him. Her mind replayed the evening, particularly Cortez's final words. The warmth in his voice, the genuine interest in his questions, the way he'd looked at her as an individual rather than an enemy. She uploaded her report that night but kept the data chip Cortez had given her. Alone in her quarters, she activated it, reading his research into the late hours. He was right. Human and Keltharian neurology shared stunning similarities. They could literally understand each other on a biological level. At the end of the file was a personal note. If you ever want to discuss this further, I'm available. Not as a scientist or a diplomat, but as someone interested in knowing who you are. J.C. Drea stared at those words, feeling something shift in her chest. Fear still gripped her about humanity's hidden strength, but now another emotion threaded through it. Curiosity, attraction, and the first fragile seed of hope that perhaps the galaxy didn't have to burn. She encoded a response, brief but significant. I would like that conversation. D. Somewhere in the void, pieces were moving on a board far larger than any soldier understood. But in that moment, 2 individuals reached across the darkness separating their species, and something new began to grow. The Breaking Point commander Vorath had become obsessed. His quarters aboard the Eternal Judgment were now covered with tactical projections, analysis reports, and intercepted human communications. He barely slept, his crimson eyes bloodshot with sleepless fury. They're hiding something, he muttered to the empty room, tracing patterns on a holographic star map. They must be. No species fights like that without revealing their full hand. They're bluffing. But in the dark corners of his mind, doubt gnawed. What if they weren't? Lieutenant Drea had changed over the past month. She filed her reports dutifully, but Vorath noticed the hesitation in her voice, the careful way she phrased her assessments. He suspected she was hiding something but couldn't prove it. He didn't know about the encrypted messages she exchanged with Dr. James Cortez almost nightly. Messages that had evolved from academic discussions to something far more personal. Tell me about Earth, she had written one night. What does your home world look like? His response came with images. Blue oceans, green forests, cities that gleamed under golden sunlight. Beautiful, he wrote. But beauty exists everywhere if you know where to look. I suspect Kelthara has its own wonders. It does, she admitted. The crystal valleys where I grew up. The way the light bends through the mineral formations at sunset. I haven't thought about them in years. Why not? Because soldiers aren't supposed to think about beauty. We're supposed to think about victory. What if the two aren't mutually exclusive? What if fighting for beauty is the only victory that matters? His words stayed with her, threading through her thoughts even as she stood on the bridge beside Vorath, listening to him outline his new offensive. 600 ships, Vorath declared to the assembled fleet commanders. We hit 3 human outposts simultaneously. They can't defend all 3 with their limited numbers. We'll crush them and expose the truth. They have no hidden fleets. It's all psychological warfare. Commander, Dryas said carefully, the intelligence suggests we should proceed with caution. The humans have consistently demonstrated— Enough! Vorath slammed his fist on the console. I'm tired of your skepticism, Lieutenant. You've grown soft. Perhaps spending time with human sympathizers on Terminus Station has clouded your judgment. Dryas' jaw tightened. He suspected. Not everything, but enough to be dangerous. I only counsel wisdom, Commander. Then counsel silence, Vorath snarled. We launch in 3 days. Dismissed. Alone in her quarters, Dryas faced an impossible choice. Her duty demanded loyalty to the Empire. But everything she'd learned, everything Cortez had shown her, screamed that this offensive would be a massacre. She encrypted a message with shaking hands. James, Vorath is planning a major offensive. 3 targets, 600 ships, launching in 3 days. I shouldn't be telling you this. I'm betraying everything I've sworn to protect. But I can't watch my people walk into annihilation. His response came within minutes. Meet me. Coordinates attached. Come alone. The coordinates led to a damaged research station on the edge of neutral space, barely functional but far from prying eyes. Drea told no one where she was going, taking a small shuttle under the guise of reconnaissance. Cortez waited in the station's observation dome, silhouetted against the stars. When Drea entered, he turned, and she saw the conflict in his expression. Gratitude, concern, and something deeper that made her heart race. You took a tremendous risk contacting me, he said quietly. I had to. Drea moved closer, drawn by invisible threads. James, if this offensive happens, how will your people respond? He was silent for a long moment, then gestured to a console. I need to show you something. But first you need to understand, I'm not just a xenobiologist. I'm also an intelligence officer for the United Earth Strategic Command. The revelation should have felt like betrayal, but somehow it made sense. You've been gathering information. Yes, but Drea, everything I said to you, everything we've shared, that was real. That is real. He stepped closer, close enough that she could see the conflict in his eyes. You deserve the truth before your people commit to a war they cannot win. He activated the console, and Drea's world shattered. The images showed massive orbital shipyards around Jupiter, Saturn, and hidden asteroid facilities. Thousands of ships in various stages of construction, dreadnoughts, carriers, cruisers. Not hundreds, thousands. This is Yard Station 7, Cortez explained, his voice heavy. One of 12 major construction facilities. We've been building for 40 years, ever since our first probes detected the Keltharian Empire. We knew first contact was inevitable. We prepared. Drea's legs felt weak. 40 years. How many ships? The current estimate is 15,000 capital ships, with supporting craft bringing the total to over 30,000 vessels. He met her gaze. The expeditionary fleets you've been fighting? They're test platforms, training exercises. We've been studying your tactics, your technology, your response patterns. Every engagement has been a data collection operation. 15,000, Drea whispered. The number was incomprehensible. The entire Keltharian Empire fielded maybe 8,000 ships across all its territories. We never had a chance. No, Cortez said gently. But that doesn't mean war is inevitable. General Kestravone, who commands the real fleet, has been arguing for diplomatic solutions. She believes the galaxy is better served by cooperation than conquest. Drea looked at him, seeing the man who had quoted her people's poetry, who had asked about her childhood, who had made her question everything she thought she knew. Why are you telling me this? I could report everything to Vorath. You could, Cortez agreed. But you won't, because you're not a blind follower anymore, Drea. You're someone who seeks truth, even when it's painful. He reached out, hesitantly, and took her hand. And because I'm hoping you'll trust me, trust us. Help prevent a war neither side truly wants. His touch sent electricity through her. For weeks they'd circled each other through messages, building something fragile and precious. Now, standing in the damaged station with the truth laid bare between them, that something crystallized into certainty. I'm terrified, she admitted, her voice breaking. Of what this means. Of what I'm feeling. Of everything. I know, Cortez said softly. He reached up, gently touching her face, a gesture of intimacy that crossed every professional boundary. I'm terrified too. But terror means we're alive, that we're choosing something real over comfortable lies. Drea closed her eyes, leaning into his touch. Every regulation, every oath she'd taken screamed that this was wrong. But her heart, that treacherous organ that didn't care about politics or species, knew differently. If I help you, she said, opening her eyes to meet his, I become a traitor to my people. Or, Cortez countered, you become the person who saves them. If Vorath launches this offensive, 50 human ships will respond and destroy all 600 of his vessels. The Empire will escalate. Eventually, we'll be forced to deploy the main fleet. And when that happens... He trailed off, the implication clear. Drea thought of Vorath's obsession, of the pride that would drive the Empire to ruin rather than admit defeat. She thought of the crystal valleys of her youth, of billions of Keltharians who would die in a war they couldn't win. She thought of the man before her, who had shown her kindness, understanding, and a vision of something better than endless conflict. What do you need me to do? She asked. Relief flooded Cortez's expression. He pulled her close and she didn't resist. For a long moment they held each other, two individuals from different worlds, choosing connection over division. Help us save both our peoples, he whispered against her neck. Starting now. In the darkness of space, their embrace was a small spark of light. But sparks, given oxygen and care, could become fires that illuminated entire galaxies. The revelation. The warning came too late to stop the offensive entirely, but early enough to change its outcome. When Commander Vorath's 600 ships arrived at the 3 human outposts, they found not the scattered defenders they expected, but a coordinated response force of 50 vessels positioned with devastating precision. The battle lasted 40 minutes. Vorath lost 437 ships. The humans lost 3. In the aftermath, as escape pods scattered through the debris field and Vorath's flagship limped toward Empire space, Lieutenant Drea sat in a shuttle between worlds, literally and figuratively. Behind her lay everything she'd known. Ahead, uncertainty and the faint hope of redemption. Dr. James Cortez piloted the shuttle personally, his hands steady on the controls despite the magnitude of what they'd done. There's still time to turn back, he said quietly. I would understand. Drea looked at him, this human who had become the axis around which her world rotated. No, I made my choice. Now I have to live with the consequences. They docked with the UNES Prometheus, a human research and diplomatic vessel that served as cover for much deeper operations. The crew treated Drea with cautious respect, but she felt their stares. The first Keltharian defector to humanity, the traitor who had warned them of the offensive. Admiral Helena Cross awaited them in her ready room. She was a striking woman. In her 60s, with iron-gray hair pulled back severely, dark skin etched with the lines of decades of command, and eyes that missed nothing. She wore the dark blue uniform of United Earth Naval Service with quiet authority. Lieutenant Drea, Cross said, gesturing to a chair. Or should I say former lieutenant? I imagine your commission is forfeit after today's warning. Admiral, Drea replied, sitting stiffly. I betrayed my oath. I don't expect your trust. Trust? Cross's expression was unreadable. No, I don't trust you. Not yet. But I respect what you did. It took courage to choose truth over loyalty. She glanced at Cortez, who stood beside Drea with protective proximity. James speaks highly of you. That carries weight. Sir, Cortez interjected, Drea has intelligence that could prevent the full-scale war the Empire is considering. She knows their command structure, their strategic doctrine, their weakness. I'm sure she does. Cross leaned back, studying Drea with the intensity of a surgeon examining a patient. But intelligence is only valuable if we know how to use it. Tell me, Drea, why did you truly defect? And don't give me platitudes about peace. I need to understand your motivation. Drea met the Admiral's gaze unflinchingly. Because I saw the truth. Because I couldn't watch my people commit genocide through arrogance. Because... She hesitated, then continued. Because someone showed me there was another way, that strength and mercy could coexist. Cross's eyes flicked to Cortez, and something like amusement touched her stern features. I see. James, you're dismissed. I need to speak with our guest privately. Cortez hesitated, clearly wanting to stay, but military discipline won out. He squeezed Drea's shoulder reassuringly before leaving. When the door sealed, Cross's demeanor shifted. He cares about you, she said bluntly. And unless I'm mistaken, you care about him. That complicates things. Drea's scales flushed with the Keltharian equivalent of a blush. We haven't. Yet, Cross finished. But you will. I've commanded enough ships to recognize that particular energy. She stood, moving to a wall panel. Let me show you something. Then you can decide if this path you've chosen leads to salvation or damnation. The panel revealed a massive holographic display. Drea's breath caught. It showed the Sol system, Earth's home. But it wasn't the peaceful system she'd imagined. Enormous orbital facilities ringed Jupiter, each one larger than a Keltharian city. Saturn hosted shipyards that stretched for millions of kilometers. The asteroid belt had been partially converted into automated construction facilities, and emerging from concealed lunar facilities were ships, thousands of them. This is the Armada, Cross said quietly. 15,000 capital ships, 30,000 total vessels including support craft, fighters, and logistics. We've spent 4 decades building it in secret, hidden behind sensor baffles and misinformation campaigns. The expeditionary fleets you've been fighting, training exercises, live fire testing grounds. Drea stood on shaking legs, moving closer to the display. She could see dreadnoughts that dwarfed anything the Empire possessed, carriers that could deploy entire fighter wings in seconds, cruisers bristling with weapons that made Keltharian plasma cannons look primitive. Why? She whispered. Why build all this if you claim to want peace? Because peace without strength is just a word, Cross replied. We learned that the hard way. Earth's history is soaked in blood from people who trusted without verifying, who hoped without preparing. We don't make that mistake anymore. We prepare for the worst and hope for the best. You could conquer the entire galaxy with this fleet. Yes, Cross agreed, but conquest isn't our goal. Never has been. We want coexistence, trade, cooperation. But we also want the galaxy to understand that we're not prey. We're not victims. We're equals who will defend ourselves with overwhelming force if necessary. Drea turned to face the Admiral. Vorath won't stop. The High Council won't accept defeat. They'll escalate, throw everything they have at you. And when they see this, she gestured at the display, it will break them. I know, Cross said heavily, which is why I need your help. You understand their psychology, their culture. You can help us craft a message that doesn't destroy their pride while making our position clear. What kind of message? Cross pulled up another display, this one showing a communication template. A broadcast to the entire Keltharian Empire, not a threat but an offer. Conditional peace, disarmament, membership in a new galactic council, where species meet as equals, not as masters and subjects. We'd frame it as an evolution, not a surrender. Drea read the proposed message, her mind racing. It was brilliant. It gave the Empire a way to save face while accepting reality. But success would require the right voice, the right presentation. It needs to come from one of you, Drea said slowly. A Keltharian who defected, explaining why. It needs to be personal, emotional. Facts won't change minds hardened by centuries of superiority. But story might. Cross nodded slowly. You're volunteering to make this broadcast? I'm the logical choice. They'll call me traitor, but some will listen. Some will wonder if I saw something they're missing. Drea met the Admiral's eyes. And yes, I'll do it, because James was right. Truth matters more than comfortable lies. A slight smile touched Cross's stern features. You really do care about him. Drea didn't deny it. In my culture, we have a saying, the heart knows no borders. I thought it was romantic nonsense until I met him. The heart knows no borders, Cross repeated thoughtfully. I like that. She deactivated the displays. Very well. We'll begin crafting your message tomorrow. For tonight you should rest. James has been assigned as your cultural liaison, which means his quarters are adjacent to yours. I'm sure you'll find that convenient." The knowing look in Cross's eyes made Drea's scales flush again, but she didn't protest. When she left the ready room, Cortez was waiting in the corridor, anxiety clear on his face. "How did it go?" he asked. "I'm helping craft a peace message," Drea said. Then more softly, "She knows about us. And she doesn't object, said you're my liaison." Understanding dawned in Cortez's eyes. He took her hand, no longer hiding, no longer pretending their connection was merely professional. "Want to see Earth? We're in orbit." They stood together in an observation lounge, looking down at the blue-green world spinning below. Oceans vast beyond comprehension, continents green with life, clouds swirling in patterns that seemed almost alive. "It's beautiful," Drea whispered. "It's home," Cortez replied. "And maybe it could be yours too, if you wanted." Drea turned to him, seeing not a human, but simply James, the man who had shown her kindness, challenged her assumptions, and offered her hope when she had none. "I'd like that." He kissed her then, gentle and questioning. She answered by pulling him closer, bridging the final gap between their worlds with the simple truth that love recognized no boundaries of species or creed. Below them, Earth turned. Above them, the Armada waited in silent readiness. But in that moment, two individuals from different worlds proved that the future could be written not in weapons and war, but in connection and courage. Tomorrow would bring challenges. Tonight was theirs. The silent arrival. High Counselor Zareth stood in the council chamber of Kelthera, surrounded by holographic displays showing the Empire's collapse. Every screen told the same story. Defeat. 400 ships lost in a single offensive. Entire sectors refusing deployment orders. Colonies on the frontier begging for peace negotiations. And worst of all, the broadcast. Lieutenant Drea's face appeared on every communication channel throughout the Empire. She spoke with quiet conviction, explaining her defection, her discoveries, her plea for her people to accept reality before it destroyed them. "We are not gods," her recorded voice echoed through the chamber. "We are one species among many, and we have encountered another that surpasses us in ways we never imagined. But surpassing doesn't mean destruction. The humans offer us partnership, not servitude. They offer us a future, not annihilation. I have seen their strength, walked among them, and learned that honor lies not in stubborn pride, but in wise adaptation." Zareth had ordered the broadcast blocked, but it was too late. The message had spread like fire through dry grass, carried by sympathizers and those tired of endless war. Now his own council fractured before him. "We must negotiate," one counselor pleaded. "We cannot win this." "Coward," another shouted. "We are the Keltherian Empire. We do not bow to primitives." "They're not primitives," a third counselor said wearily. "That's what we've failed to understand. We measured them by our standards and found them wanting. We never considered they might be measuring us by standards we can't even perceive." Zareth raised a hand for silence. He was old, his scales dulled with age, his eyes tired from centuries of rule. He had built this empire through strength and cunning. Now he faced its potential dissolution. "Commander Vorath," he said, addressing the disgraced officer who stood before the council. "Your offensive failed catastrophically. What is your assessment?" Vorath looked broken, a shadow of the proud commander he'd been. "They knew we were coming. They were waiting. Not just ready, waiting, as if they'd orchestrated the entire engagement." He paused, then added quietly, "High Counselor, we never had a chance. Not against the forces we faced, and certainly not against what intelligence suggests they're holding in reserve." "Rumors," Zareth said dismissively. "Fear-mongering by traitors." "No, sir." Vorath straightened, finding some remnant of his dignity. "It's truth. I've seen the evidence. They have a fleet that dwarfs our entire military. If they deployed it, we would cease to exist within weeks." Silence fell across the chamber. For the first time in 300 years, the council faced an enemy they couldn't defeat, couldn't intimidate, couldn't ignore. "Then why haven't they attacked?" Zareth demanded. "If they're so powerful, why not crush us and take what they want?" "Because," a new voice said, "that's not who we are." Every head turned as Admiral Helena Cross materialized as a hologram at the center of the chamber. The security breach should have been impossible, yet there she stood. A human woman in her dark blue uniform, projecting calm authority into the heart of the Keltharian Empire. "My apologies for the unannounced arrival," Cross said with dry humor. "But I thought it was time we spoke directly, without intermediaries or misunderstandings." Zaref's scales flushed with rage. "You dare enter our council chamber?" "I dare many things when the alternative is unnecessary war." Cross's expression turned serious. "High Counselor, your empire stands at a crossroads. Down one path lies escalation. You throw everything you have at us. We respond with our full fleet, and billions die on both sides. Down the other path lies something unprecedented: cooperation between species. A new galactic order where strength serves peace rather than conquest." "You speak of surrender disguised as partnership," Zaref spat. "I speak of evolution," Cross countered. "Your empire has lasted 3 centuries by being the strongest. Humanity offers you the chance to last 3,000 by being the wisest. Join us in building something better. And if we refuse?" Cross was silent for a long moment. Then she gestured, and new displays appeared throughout the chamber. Real-time feeds from the edge of Keltharian space. The counselors gasped. Ships emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation. Not dozens or hundreds, but thousands. Wave after wave of human warships appeared, their numbers growing until they filled the displays like stars filling the night sky. Dreadnoughts the size of cities. Carriers that could deploy entire fighter wings. Cruisers whose weapons made the Empire's finest ships look like primitive tools. 15,000 capital ships materialized in Keltharian space, positioned with mathematical precision at every major military installation, every fleet station, every strategic choke point. They appeared simultaneously, as if choreographed by some vast intelligence. They did not fire. They simply waited. "This is the Armada," Cross said quietly. "What you've been fighting was a fraction of our strength. Test forces, training exercises. This is what humanity becomes when we dedicate ourselves to a goal. We could destroy every military asset you possess within hours. We could reduce your worlds to ash within days. We could erase your species from the galaxy within weeks." The council chamber was silent save for the sound of terrified breathing. "But we won't," Cross continued, her voice firm. "Because destruction is easy. Creation is hard. Building a future where our species coexist, learn from each other, grow together. That's the challenge we choose. That's the strength that truly matters." Zaref stared at the displays, watching as his empire's entire military infrastructure stood exposed and vulnerable. He had lived long enough to recognize when pride had no answer to reality. "What are your terms?" he asked, the words tasting like poison. "Disarmament to defensive forces only. No more expansion or conquest. Membership in a new galactic cooperative council where species meet as equals. Reparations for the colonies you've subjugated, but not so heavy they break you. And most importantly," Cross's expression softened slightly, "a future where your people and mine work together to build something better than either could achieve alone. You would trust us after we attacked you?" "Trust is earned through action, not words. But we're willing to give you the chance to earn it." Cross paused. "Besides, you have a powerful advocate arguing on your behalf. Someone who understands both our peoples." Another hologram materialized. Drea standing beside Dr. James Cortez. She wore no uniform now, just simple civilian clothing, but she stood with quiet dignity. "High Counselor," Drea said, her voice steady. "I know you consider me a traitor. Perhaps I am. But I've seen what humans are capable of, both in war and in peace. They're not our enemy. Our own arrogance is our enemy. Please, for the sake of every Keltharian who would die in a war we cannot win, accept their offer." Zaref looked at her, this young officer who had found the courage to defy everything she'd been taught. He saw no triumph in her eyes, only hope and desperate sincerity. He thought of his empire, built across centuries. He thought of the billions who depended on his wisdom. He thought of his legacy. Would he be remembered as the leader who preserved his people through difficult adaptation, or the fool who led them to extinction through pride? The choice was no choice at all. "We accept your terms," Zaref said, each word heavy as stone. "The Keltharian Empire will join your cooperative council. We will disarm to defensive levels. We will make reparations." He paused, then added, "And we will learn, as we should have learned from the beginning, that strength without wisdom is merely brutality wearing a crown." Cross nodded, respect in her eyes. Then let us begin. The Armada will remain deployed during the transition period, but not as conquerors, as guardians ensuring the peace holds. Together we'll build something the galaxy has never seen. As the holograms,